I grind for the love of the game. Despite a gap in production, we'll never retire. We grind for the love of the game. Who's keeping us up at night, sitting on the old waiver wire?
Well, yeah, there was a lot of people that thought we might have retired after this is one of the longest breaks that we've had, but we're coming back refreshed and ready to jump back into it. I'm excited for this.
Yeah, I just needed some early game in season management, game time decisions. But yeah, welcome back. This is still projecting the jump. We apologize for the layoff. It's been, if you know me personally, I've had a pretty trying year with some deaths in the family. Things come in threes, and this past week I lost sweet Raylene the cat. So this podcast is dedicated to RTC, to Raylene the cat. May you be causing havoc in another dimension somewhere. And yeah, Raylene the cat. I'm gonna silence.
Cheers.
Appreciate that. Okay, so today it is Wednesday night. It is the 15th of November. So today's show, it's a waiver wire examination, but we really wanted to kind of look at it with a certain lens. So the theme is this, like Nate and I were talking, like every year there's those players, not just the streamers who are hot, who are producing because there's an injury or something like that, where you could expect some regression, the usual names. And you have your Duncan Robinsons right now, your Sam Hausers. These are productive players if you want to stream in those stats. But then there's those certain players who you can't stand watching linger on the waiver wire. Keeps you up at night. You'll be hovering over them, like, who should I drop? Like, you're hunting, you're on everyone's team, kind of, who can I send a 2-for-1 to? And people, I've never done that. I would never send a 2-for-1 just because there's somebody I have to pick up. I'm above that. But I know people who do it. So when you're 2-for-1 hunting, who are the guys you're doing it for? So that's kind of what I came into this thinking. Nate, how often does that happen? How often is there a couple players you're looking at your team, especially in an auction format? Sometimes you just don't end up with anyone droppable. You grab somebody off the waiver wire in the beginning who's a top 50 player. And how do you feel? It's like it's a blessing. Like it's a good thing, but it's also really frustrating when you don't know who your worst player is. What do you think?
Oh, I hate not having a streamable guy at all times. And really, I feel like you want two streamable guys. And it is interesting with the waiver wire, and it depends on everybody's on the depth of your league and the settings. But but I feel like it comes in waves where there's moments you look at your waiver wire and you're like, holy smokes, there's like 6 guys, and it's usually early week, there's a whole bunch of really nice drops that happen on Sundays and like in competitive weeks. And then by Saturday, Sunday, you're picking up Tim Hardaway Jr. for the 7th time this season. But there's definitely is periods of time where you kind of just wish that one of your guys would roll an ankle so you could have another spot to add one of those guys into.
Is Tim Hardaway Jr. the most depressing pickup in 9-cat, or is it Harrison Barnes? Or do you have a third candidate?
Harrison Barnes kind of beat Tim Hardaway Jr. At least you have the option. He has the ability to have a blow up game, but they're both sad though. They're going for 1 of 2 categories.
In our league of record, every time somebody picks up Tim Hardaway, they have to send out a like guilty, like, yep, that was me, like, roast me if you must. And everyone has those players, and these are not those players. We like to think of you guys on this list as the antithesis of the depressing pickup you make on Sunday. So let's get into some names. Speaking of names, we highlighted this player on the Let's Talk Rookies podcast in the off season before the season started, and I made a point to watch some tape on this guy, and I think it's kind of turning out as well as any reasonable person could have hoped early in the season. That is rookie swingman Bilal Coulibaly. Bilal Coulibaly. He is a small forward only eligible player on Yahoo, which is a bugaboo of mine. Might be a little bit of a side talk theme of this podcast. He's a very switchable player. I think you're going to see him in a number of roles throughout the season. He is up 29% just this past week. So he went from 4% to 33%. So he's been hot. I had mentioned on that rookie podcast, I took him at pick 179. Unfortunately, I dropped him at the wrong time. leading me to another little side tangent, and that is when you're in multiple leagues and you let a decision inform another decision. And so this morning, my worst player in quotes is, I guess, crunch time Zach Collins. I think he's he's 81% rostered. I don't think he should be floating on any waiver wires, but in anticipation of this show and the fact that I dropped him in a deeper league right before he started to take off, I picked up Koulibaly and I dropped crunch time. Now, do I have a waiver request submitted for Zach Collins? I don't know. Couldn't, maybe. I don't know.
I know you do.
But listen, man, the Wizards are obviously a mess in every way imaginable. The rotations all over the map, the usage, wacky. Wes Unseld Jr., despite his father being the best outlet passer in the game, RIP, he has to be the worst coach in the NBA, doesn't
he? Yeah, I think Steve Clifford has the lowest ceiling of anybody, but I wouldn't necessarily argue with the Wes Unseld.
But he drinks Folgers, and that you can depend on that. Wes Unseld Jr. drinks warm kombucha in the morning. I know he does.
Oh.
But listen, so Koulibaly, I think, is the one guy who stands to benefit from all of this carnage, because he is such a raw player who can do a number of things on the court, fill a number of roles. And if you're not trying to win games, rolling a raw rookie out, that's not the worst strategy. So just some quick numbers on this guy. Over the last week, which is really when you started to see the jump, he's a 67th ranked player. He's given you 11.5 points, 4.5 boards, 2 dimes, almost 2 steals a game, and only 0.3 blocks. I see that coming up. If you look at his preseason numbers, summer league numbers, he's had a 3-block and a 2-block game. And here's kind of the ceiling line. This is where, I kind of was like, crap, like this guy needs to be rostered. November 12th against Brooklyn, he had 4 triples, 20 points, 7 rebounds, 3 assists, and 4 steals in 34 minutes. So the minutes have really leveled out. He's played in between 30 to 20 minutes in his last 5 games. He played 28 tonight, put up a nice line. So am I calling him must roster? No. But he's one of these intriguing players that I see sitting there, and I think to myself, I don't want to see someone else pick him up. And it bothers you when it happens. And so, I made a bit of a hasty decision today. So Nate, what do you think about the player? And also, what do you think about this category of guys that you just hate to see floating around too long? And when someone else picks them up, you just you just kick yourself.
He's definitely was one of those guys on my short list of players that I was monitoring all season. And there was at no point was there a need to pick him up, but until this week, really. And then obviously his kind of his ownership rate had kind of shot through the roof, but he was, it does still feel a little early on the pickup, but I feel like for a guy like that, you have to be early to the party or you're not going to get it. I laid some money on him preseason on him being first team all rookie. And I'm feeling pretty happy about that right now. But I have been a little surprised about his overall game. Initially, I think like most people, I was surprised to see him not starting after he started all preseason. That was a little confounding to have him come off the bench right away, and his minutes were pretty low. But since then, his minutes have really ticked up quite a bit. And I think some of it is that the Wizards are pretty close to historically bad at defense. They're so bad at defense. And so you have one guy out there that's really trying to play defense, because it's not Kuzma and it's not Poole. So it's I think that role is pretty locked in, just because they need somebody to go out there and try hard. And so I think his minutes are going to be playing pretty hot, going to be continuing to move up. The other thing you were mentioning, some of these 3-point games that he's had from shooting, that was an element of his game that I wasn't expecting to see, and we didn't see that in preseason as much either.
He was taking them. He's just missing a lot of them.
It was looking raw, and I know when he was in Paris, he wasn't a shooter over there either. My assumption was that he was going to come in as a power forward that was just going to be playing defense and kind of crashing the boards. And he's been a little bit more well-rounded than I was expecting to see. I
was also expecting him to come in as a power forward when it comes to Yahoo's eligibility.
So, yeah, that's a little surprising. I guess they're like, 6'6". Right. There's no way you can be that. But
yeah, switchable defender, playing all. It's funny you said the Wizards are really bad at defense, and ironically, their best defender, Daniel Gatford, is getting sat entire fourth quarters for no reason, playing 18 minutes a game way too often. And what I love about the Washington Wizards is they can light this thing on fire all they want, and they're still going to end up with the 5th pick, and they're going to take some 6'6", 4-year college player who can shoot the ball. Because
I'm
that's
just
what the
going to
Wizards
say
do.
this. I'm just going to say this right now. Daniel Gafford is a poor man to Hassan Whiteside. I don't think he's actually good at defense, but I do think he's good at racking up stats, though.
Yes, for our purposes as fantasy players, he's good at defense. But yeah, on the court, is Daniel Gafford really that good a player? I don't think so. But
yeah,
he's a lot better than anything else the Wizards can trot out there at center.
Yeah.
So who's on your mind here?
Well, so I wanted to kind of roll back. You went for like a really good topical guy, and I kind of was looking at the way I looked at this topic was guys that were on that fringe on the waiver that have since kind of graduated into full-time locks on roster a little bit. And so I'm going to start with a couple guys that if you're listening to this podcast and you're really into fantasy, you're probably going to roll your eyes a little bit at my first couple of guys because they're owned in 50% of leagues or so, and in competitive leagues they're long gone. But just because they're owned in 50% of leagues doesn't mean that a lot of these guys don't end up on your wire a lot.
Sure.
And so I just wanted to highlight a few of these guys just because a lot of times they'll get dropped on a Sunday, and just to highlight, go after these guys hard with their free agency budgets because they are they're not streamers. And the first one, which doesn't really fit this category, well, the first guy I want to talk about is Jalen Suggs, who's been awesome so far this season, and I'm really glad to see it. I was excited. I thought he was going to be great coming out of college, and he's obviously had a really slow start with playing offense. He's had a hard time with playing on that side of the ball, but it's getting a little bit better for him. But that's really not the reason that you have him. I think the main thing is that Orlando's kind of has coalesced into a nice role for him, and that's starting alongside Fultz. And it's not necessarily being the point guard; it's more, although he does have point guard eligibility. It's mainly playing as the 2 guard, and so that's kind of freed him up to do a lot more spot shooting and just playing defense. And so the reason you have him is because he's the he's the 4th best steals player in the entire league at 2.1 steals per game, which is elite, which is truly elite.
I'll point out too that Markelle Fultz has been on the bench more than he's been on the court, so I'm interested to see how it looks when Fultz is back full time. He's missed a lot of games. I know from experience.
Yeah, that's a good point. Yeah, I mean, some of his offensive numbers, Suggs that is, have been a little juiced. He's been riding a hot streak as far as his usage rates goes, and scoring has been bumped up to 20 points per game. He had a four game run of that. Mm-hmm. But I think with Anthony Black too is also playing a lot more than people thought as well. But I think
he's terrible, by the way.
I don't know. I've been impressed when I've watched the.
It's the hair bump. It's the big hair bump. You can't see past it.
Yeah, that's true. That's fair. That's a really strong point there.
If he shaves that head, you're going to be off the bandwagon, man.
I'll be like, who is this guy out there? Yeah, I don't know. He looks like he has some good rim running on that, and I think he looks a little bit like first year Jeremy Sohan to me. But but I guess the encouraging thing with Suggs, I think, and the reason that I would say if he's on your wire to snatch him up, even when Fultz comes back, even though Anthony Black is going to get more minutes, is that we're seeing better and better shooting numbers out of him. And I think his rookie year, he shot 21% from 3. Second year, he jumped up to 33%. And this year, he's increased that again up to 35%, which is about league average. And so that's really contributed to him at least giving you something on the offensive end.
Yeah, no, I'm with this one. You're talking to a man who has 50% exposure to Suggs as far as how many leagues I have him rostered. Our league
exposed to.
I'm exposed. Our league, I've been exposed to Suggs. Our leagues just, the benches are a little too shallow. I can't quite swing it. But I think he's shown a sizable improvement. The guy plays super hard. He is just a jitterbug out there. He's shout out Flyin J. He's all around Shout out to the origin of the nickname Flying J, not just me. But yeah, dude's all over the court. I think he's shown some real improvements in his offensive game. You mentioned the steals. He's a glue guy. He's somebody who's gonna give you a bump in steals. You're gonna get the spike weeks and points. You're gonna get. He's improved all over the board. So he's 22 years old, and after the rookie of the year, Scotty Barnes was the 4th pick, and a lot of people thought Suggs would go 4. He goes 5th. He was kind of looking like the lost man in that draft class. But I don't think the book has been written on Jalen Suggs. I like him a lot. I won't call him must roster, but I think he fits this topic because he's like, I don't know, he's definitely top 10 in players I see available. And I go, well, this is going to bite me eventually. Like there'll be a couple of weeks where I'm like, not so happy that I let Jalen Suggs just chill. But like I said, 50% exposure, 1 points league. He's made a jump in points leagues formats too.
Oh, nice.
So yeah, I'm down with that. Speaking of guards, my next player is now the starting point guard of the Utah Jazz.
I knew you were gonna go here next. I just knew it.
I know you did. Yeah, so that's the keynote speaker himself, Keontae George. Hello, Yahoo. I just mentioned, so the last 3 games, Keontae George has been the starting point guard. That was kind of what was expected. Guess what position he's eligible on for Yahoo? It's only one.
I'm guess it's not point guard, huh?
No, it's shooting guard only. Shooting guard only. So I don't know what Yahoo's doing this year, man, but let's get with that. Let's get him the point guard eligibility. Keontae George is up 10% in the past week. He's up to 27%. So what's the key stat with him? Well, Keontae George has been like a fumbling banker, dropping dimes with ease. Shout out to Bones Berry from 2K19. If you play a lot of 2K, that's one of his taglines. So let's take a look at just the last week since he's become a starter. You get 10 points, 9 dimes. I didn't take a look to see in the last week where that would, but that's elite. That's like Suggs and steals. Keontae George, if you're looking for assists, I don't think you're going to find a better guy on the wire. Just 3 rebounds, 1.3 triples. He has not missed a free throw on 2.3 attempts. Look out for the shooting. You got to be able to absorb that. He's shooting 31% from the field. He doesn't really bring much in the way of defensive stats. But I feel like he's a key player for this list because he's a long-term stash. He's a player that as the season develops, Utah's going nowhere fast. It didn't take very long for people to figure out that Taylor Horton Tucker, and by people I mean the Jazz brass. Taylor Horton Tucker's terrible. He's not a point guard. I guess for like a 19-win team, he can come in and get some buckets off the bench, but he's not a point guard. That's not working out. Clarkson, I think he's a combo guard.
He's also sneakily old and looks sneakily older than he even is.
I think he's like 23.
He looks like he's like 38.
He's like 23. He's sneakily young.
Yeah. Oh, is he really?
Yeah, he's like 22, 20. He's incredibly young.
Oh, okay. Well, but it looks like he's 38.
He really does. No, he does. And he plays like it. But yeah, if Keontae George is on your waiver wire and you have room, he is my number 1 guard eligible player that is under 40% owned. He's just 27% owned. So yeah, in competitive leagues, he might already be gone. I was able to get him in a league where I have a team named Projecting the Jump with a little microphone emoji. So I was happy to be able to grab him. And he's not rostered in our league of record. So if you're listening, I wouldn't worry about him. This is a smoke screen. Just let him chill there. Just like last year, he was the player James accused me of just creating a smoke screen for. I think it might have been Devin Vassell actually. But yeah, Keontae George should not be floating on any waiver wires. If you have room, pluck him. What say you? Natron claim.
Yeah, he fits this list really well in that he's somebody that I'm terrified is going to end up on somebody else's team and blow up a lot. I feel the same way as I felt with like Jalen Johnson in that first week where I saw him on the wire and I was like, oh my gosh, I don't really want to drop any of my guys for him, but like, God, I don't want anybody else. I don't want anybody else to pick him up. And sure enough, he's been great. But Keontae George, I feel the same way a little bit. It's really, and some of it I think is we touched on him very, very briefly in our rookie pod coming out of Baylor, but I'm really surprised about the dimes. I mean, I think Yahoo is clearly surprised too because they had him as a shooting guard, and And part of that was his track record. I mean, he would, at Baylor, he had a negative assist to turnover ratio.
Wow.
Yeah, he averaged
Yeah.
only 2.8 assists per game at Baylor.
Right.
And he was a top 15 pick in the league. So to see these assist numbers are really eye-popping and surprising, that I'm curious to see how sticky that they are.
Mhm.
And maybe it's just one of those things where he was at Baylor, he felt like he needed to just do all the scoring and creating, and he was the book on him was he was a black hole. Kind of coming out.
Right.
He was kind of the Jordan Clarkson-esque.
Yeah, he was playing off ball, wasn't he? He wasn't their main point guard. I'm no college
I'm
scout, but
I'm not sure if they had a more of a distributor or not. So it was a surprise to see. I mean, I was expecting him to kind of come in and be able to put up a lot of scoring, at some point for Utah, but to see him to have a more well-rounded game is pretty neat to see, and it's something that boy, like, Utah clearly was screaming for. I mean, you could feel the difference. I mean, when you watch the games, you could feel the difference between having Mike Conley and not having Mike Conley this year. Is like their offense is sputtering, so they clearly have the need for somebody. So I love this addition on here. I haven't pulled the trigger yet, but I really like its inclusion.
yeah, this wasn't the statistical, just to kind of close the book on keynotes, George, Keontae. Yeah, this wasn't the profile that you would expect from him. What I like about the fact is the dimes may regress a bit, but the fact that you're getting 10 points already and he's shooting 31% from the field, a lot of people might see a red flag for a young guard. We know that rookie guards can really struggle with their shooting to start. I actually see that as, there being room for a positive regression, for there to be more stairs to climb. If he can get that up, closer to 40%, then you're looking at a must roster guy if the dimes even stay close to 9.
Yeah, if they even stay above 6,
yeah,
I mean, that's
exactly.
great.
Exactly.
Yeah, I mean, it'll be curious. I'm really curious to see how his season long rankings go in comparison to Jaden Ivey last year. That's kind of the comp I had in my head for him, but we'll see.
Yeah, that's not a bad comp. Jalen Ivey kind of getting lost in the shuffle over there in Detroit.
Yeah, he is. That's sad to see. But it's a long season. All right. So my next guy, and I'm going to go into the highly owned guys before I go into a couple deeper dives. And this one, I'm only going this way so I can just take a victory lap here.
Oh, God.
I might even just stand up and walk around just to and talk while I'm doing this, just because I need to stretch my legs and talk about my boy Dylan Brooks.
Oh, God.
Crushing it for Houston. Are you kidding me? It's still owned in only 47% of leagues.
Did you record that? Did you record this like 7 to 10 days ago?
He's still doing great. Come on. All season he's doing great.
I just dropped him for Keontae George, actually, which is hilarious.
Did you? Really?
Yeah, I did.
Oh,
and I couldn't be happier about it.
Man. Now this is clearly where we show where we don't agree on everything, and that's okay.
Times.
Like,
that'd be boring. Yeah.
It would be. But I mean, it's cool. We don't need to spend too long on Dylan Brooks. But real quick. Yeah. Let's hear it.
He really started out hot, and I had him. I was riding him. It's been 5 games now. The past week he's 269th. He's shooting 42%, so not crazy. On the season, he's shooting 55% when he shot 39% last season. So what I see is a player who's regressing to the mean. If you just look at the shooting numbers historically and the fact that he came out blazing hot, do I think he'll average 8 points on the season like he has the past week? No. But it's going to be closer to 12, 13 points. So I think Dylan Brooks is a perfect example of a player for Flyin J. I'll put my stamp on this, that I would drop for the first 2 names that I brought up, and like a longer term stash. I would not be afraid to lose Dylan Brooks. But yeah, he was really helping you early on. And I think right now you're kind of riding the early production.
Yeah, and I'll push back on your pushback and just say that he was going up against some pretty elite teams, and as the primary defender was expelling his some energy over there. But I think what's neat about Dylan Brooks is that we're seeing an actualized version of him and seeing what everybody wanted has been screaming at their screens to see, and that's somebody that's shooting the ball a little bit less. And he's doing that. He's only
less
shooting,
Dylan Brooks' best.
Yeah, he's currently shooting 4.8 field goals per game, which is the lowest since his second year when he only played in 18 games. So he's really just kind of is taking his opportunities and kind of being a really good auxiliary piece for your fantasy team. So I just wanted to throw him in there, and I feel like we haven't talked about Kelly Oubre that much in this pod, but I'm wondering if maybe we can make Dylan Brooks this year's Kelly Oubre.
Just to make it actionable, would you call Dylan Brooks at this point must roster, or would you drop him for a higher upside stash if you're doing well in the standings?
No, I think you got to hang on to him.
Oh, do you?
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, of these guys, no, I feel the opposite of you. I think I would, he's averaging 14, 4 and 2. Steals numbers are solid, 2 threes a game, minimal turnovers. I feel like it comes down to, this is kind of what makes fantasy basketball so fun, where and I feel like it shows the difference between our interest in risk of teams, where I totally understand, and it makes sense that you would drop him for one of those guys, because you're looking to you don't care about the singles, you're looking to hit the triples and the home runs, and I'm just like, give me those singles and doubles. I love that safety nets of it. So this is, I feel like, a pretty classic disagreement between us.
It's illuminating in our styles. I think we should keep Dylan Brooks watch as a theme here. Tari Eason came back into the rotation. Amen Thompson went out of the rotation. His minutes have dropped down since Tari Eason's come back.
Been killing it. He's been killing it.
So, like, for me, I think depending on whose advice you prefer to trust, and say this is literally your worst player, you want to pick up these guys, my stamp of approval to go ahead and drop Dylan Brooks. I think it'll be fine. But yeah, if you have a deeper team and you really want to have that glue guy, like, I get it, but I fear not to drop Dylan Brooks, and we'll keep an eye on the situation.
Yeah, I mean, to be fair, I do want to make sure that I am saying that he should be your worst to second worst guy on your team. Don't think that he's going to be like a must roster at all points of the season, but I do want to take a victory lap in that he is currently in the top 60. So
Dylan Brooks. Okay, we'll keep an eye on that. Okay, sticking with the theme of players I dropped Dylan Brooks for. This next player, he's up 11% over the past week. He's 32% rostered on Yahoo. He's a shooting guard only. This one I can't really argue with. This guy first appeared on our radar as we looked at the NCAA tournament with an NBA scouting lens last year. He led his team as a 4 seed to the national title. This player is Jordan Hawkins. So the early returns on Jordan Hawkins is he's a straight bucket at this level as well. So at first, and this is a little similar to what I said about Keontae George, buyer beware on the field goal percentage. It's a little rough right now, but if you're already punting that, this guy's massively underrated by ranking systems. The past 2 weeks, if you just pull up your Yahoo app, he's 148th over the past 2 weeks. However, if you punt field goal percentage, I went on a hashtag basketball, I dropped it down to a 0.25 factor. He jumps into the top 100. So over the past 2 weeks, you're getting 15.6 points, more than Dylan Brooks, 4.4 rebounds, and almost 2 dimes. Very Brook-esque, actually, those numbers are. 4.4 rebounds, almost 2 dimes. You're getting 3.3 triples a game. He's a 91% free throw shooter, giving you half a steal. I love the 32 minutes. And again, like I said, this guy can really stroke it. They need to space the floor. And I can see him sticking to around 24 minutes a game, even when what's that long range wing Trey Murphy comes back. I'm not calling him must roster. I'm saying he's a player I did scoop up in a deeper league. He's one of my most droppable players, but I'm really enjoying the ride right now. Curious where it's going to go. And he's one of those players that when I'm looking through the waiver wire, I'm like, someone's going to have fun. They're going to have a good time with Mr. Hoggins if I don't pick him up. So I love the scoring upside. He's not for every build, but I think he's sneaky right now. Have you given any thought to Jordan Hawkins?
Oh, of course, yeah. I mean, he's a Husky
Every night? Yes.
Yeah,
You are a UConn
yeah.
fan, right.
I'm a UConn fan, yeah.
He's clutch, man.
And I was glad to see him kind of. I think when he went to New Orleans, New Orleans is known for being so deep that I was a little worried that he was going to get the added opportunity. But as we know, New Orleans has been decimated by injuries.
It's geographically deep too, if you look at a map.
That's true. Pretty low elevation negative, right? But I mean, I think with just that full amount of injuries right now, his opportunity has gone through the roof. And like you said, they desperately need the spacing. And so as a not a short term, but a kind of a mid-level stream for as long as CJ and Trey Murphy and Jose Alvarez are all out, I think it's a really good pickup for that, because he's kind of there. He's in the starting lineup, and they kind of need that creation on the perimeter a little bit. So I'm excited to see it. I love the swing on it. It's one of those things, you pick them up. If it works, you're going to have an awesome, at least minimum 2-3 week guy.
Yeah.
If it doesn't, you just move on. It's so early in the season. I think this is a really good highlight. It's somebody I hadn't thought about for this, and but I love this. I love his inclusion.
How do you feel about the Grand Theft Alvarado nickname for Jose Alvarado?
It's hilarious. Like, you gotta like that, right?
He's so fun, man. I went to a lot of Pels games last year, and they love him. There was more Jose Alvarado jerseys than Zion, which is fair, as far as the fan experience that you get over there.
Now, what's the overall amount of fabric used? Is there more fabric used in the Zions, or more fabric used in the Jose's?
There's way more kids jerseys and jerseys for her, Jose Alvarado.
Really?
Yeah, so I'd say like you're more likely to see a Zion jersey on like a bigger person, the full grown man. A lot of kids. Sure. Jose Alvarado, a fan favorite down in New Orleans.
That's a good one. I really like this inclusion here.
Well, I appreciate that. What you got next? Any other Dusty veterans?
My next one, yeah, I'm actually not gonna go for a guy that's mainly owned, but some of this, it's another swing at this point. He's I think a guy that's kind of is I would include as a streamer at the moment. He was a streamer for all of last season, but I'm curious about it, picking him up for long term, and that is Santi Aldama. And he missed the first part of the season. The Grizzlies are clearly in a tailspin. Since he's been back, they've looked a lot more competitive. They clearly have been screaming for another big man in there. But what I find intriguing about Aldama is although it's kind of funny because he has a game of a 8th year player, 9th, 10th year player, like Bogdanovich almost or something. But he's a 3rd year player in the same class as Jalen Suggs and Mobley and all those guys. He's a 1st round pick. And so there's a lot of meat on the bones as far as potential goes there. Let's see here. So last year he averaged 22 minutes per game. This year he's only played 5 games because he had that injury at the beginning of the season. So he's only playing 21 minutes. But what I'm curious is if he can hit that, if his minutes start bumping up and he starts really kind of getting the minutes bump over Tillman or Roddy, then I think look out. I think you've kind of got a live wire in your hands here. It's one thing to say that, but the other thing is, after years of frustration with the Memphis Grizzlies and watching Brandon Clark crush it per minute, but then be the 7th guy on the team.
Now Okongwu is taking that belt.
He is, yeah, big time, yeah. So I think there's, I think it's hold back the reins a little bit, but really he's only owned in 11% of leagues at this point, so he's available almost everywhere. And I think that what you like about him is that he fits a lot of builds really neatly, and that he's he's hitting 1.6 threes per game, but he's also has that forward center eligibility. So he's average. He's going to get you a bunch of rebounds. He's going to have a high, surprisingly high field goal percentage for a guy that's shooting those threes, and then kind of give you the blocks. I think it's somebody that is kind of a Miles Turner light, and I think he's the right time to swing on him because he's just coming back from his injury. They're working him back into shape. So I think you may be buying low on him at this moment. So what do you think about Odama?
I like the call. Miles Turner light is a gaudy comp. Extremely light as far as the blocks production. But I like his game. I like his profile. I like what you outlined. Here's the biggest, I would say, asterisk next to this playing out is Dave Yeager just doesn't seem interested in playing him next to JJJ. If you look at the splits, and I was listening to another podcast talking about the rotation in Memphis, and there's just been a real hesitancy to put him at power forward where he can stretch the floor, he can stroke it, it could open him up to come in and get some weak side blocks, but he can block shots. So with your comp, I thought it was a little gaudy, but he really can block. He really can block shots. But the scheme and the role he's used in, I'm just afraid it's more likely than not that they do kind of ease Tillman back in there, because much like Anthony Davis early, for much of his career, JJJ, either on his side or it's Dave Yeager, they're just not interested in playing him as a full-time center. And I think that would be, for their current roster construction, that could unlock something, because I think Santi Aldama is a better player than Tillman, just a better NBA player. He does more things on the floor. And so, yeah, I would love to see some minutes open up for him. I think he should be starting at power forward and JJJ should be starting at center, but I'm not Dave Yeager. He's a great coach. So just keep an eye on that. Keep an eye on the splits. If he starts getting more time next to JJJ, that's his path to actually overtaking Tillman as far as usage in the Grizzlies rotation.
Yeah. I think it's one of those things where he's like an end of the week streamer at the moment, but even if he jumps up to mid 20s, like high 20s on minutes, then you have a long-term guy on your hands. And so at 11% owned, he's a free roll. So.
No, I agree. Yeah, we're getting a little deeper here. So I guess, like, for me, these next players aren't players that I sit there lingering on my cell phone thinking, like, who do I drop or do I make a 2-for-1? These are just guys that I think are more than just short-term, kind of like Aldama. This is a similar one. I think this guy's going to find ways to stay relevant, but right now, due to injuries, he's been extra relevant. Somebody I know we've liked a lot, we've talked about in the past, and that player is Dyson Daniels in New Orleans. I really like his profile. I think we both do. He's point guard and shooting guard eligible, which is nice. He's up 7% on Yahoo to 17% rostered. So over the past 2 weeks, Nathan Litke, he is the 93rd ranked player. He's getting 28 minutes a game. That's him. He's getting 28 minutes a game, which, is probably a little more than he'll average for the season. He's probably closer to 2022. He just does a little bit of everything, man. 10 points, 5 rebounds, 4 dimes, a steal and a half a block, a triple and a half, solid percentages, 47.5 from the field. I believe it was somewhere in the range of 77% from the line. I know we touched on him in last season's rookie pod. He has a very friendly 9-cat profile. He's always flashed when given opportunities. He has an opportunity now. But I think he's a glue guy. He's a fun glue guy because he's younger. There's still that mystery box with him. But when he gets an opportunity, I think he tends to knock it out of the park more often than not. The stat line is never hollow. You're always getting something with Dyson Daniels. I really like his game.
Yeah. I mean, his stat profile is actually a little Jalen Suggsy in a way.
Totally.
But he's extremely athletic, and so for that reason, there is that bust out potential that you have with him, and so that does make him fun for that reason. The other hair is, the whiz. Yeah.
Fun, dude.
Okay. Now I got to knock him down a little bit, but I mean, did you see him live when you were in
yes,
when you were Smoothie King at all?
Yes, and he looks like the way he moves on the court as a defender laterally just jumps out in person. Like, this guy really sticks it to the opposing, picking someone up full court. If they need to pressure the ball, Dyson Daniels would come in those situations. even last year as a rookie. If they need, they would sub him in for CJ in late game situations sometimes just to get some defense. Yeah, he's a baller. That kid's a gamer. 17% is too low. Look at your roster right now. I can think of a few rosters in our league where there's players that need to be dumped for Dyson Daniels just for the upside and what he's giving you right now. So I just think he's the kind of player I'm going to fish through and find these guys. Dyson Daniels, he should be north of 25% rostered, I would think, by this time next week.
Yeah, I mean, I had to give. I love that type of guy that kind of created that found that humility so early, because he was a crazy high recruit guy coming in, and then to and I feel like a lot of those guys, like, just it takes a number of years for them. They come into the league thinking that they're going to be a 25 point a game scorer, and they just huck it up, and they're kind of hollow that way. And so I'm very impressed by his ability to be like, okay, like, my packed away to minutes is to play defense and just kind of be a glue guy. So I give him credit for that. And I think that that's a lot of the reasons that Willie Green is trusting him so much with minutes at this juncture, really, on that deep team.
Willie Green's a really good coach. Yeah, Dyson Daniels, he takes the game as seriously as Bruce Brown year 8. Like, he's just he just I love what you said about the fact that he knows his path to minutes is to hustle, to do the dirty work. But yeah, as we know from the fact that he was a high recruit, he has a ceiling that he has kind of flashed. But I think keep an eye on him in dynasty leagues. If you play deep dynasty, float an offer, see if the person who has him takes it seriously, because I do think Dyson Daniels could be a 9-cat monster one day.
Yeah. He's gonna be an interesting guy to track for sure. Another guy that I threw on here.
The hesitation in your posture and voice. Okay.
I'm high on him at this particular second.
Now.
I do wonder if he's more of a short-term stream. And I guess I'm really interested to hear your opinion. If you think he's more of a short-term stream, because he is a short-term stream right now, or if he's a guy that's going to be on, that his roster percentage is going to continue to grow as the season goes on. And that's Jaime Jaquez.
Oh, interesting. Fun. Okay, what do you got?
Yeah, well, so in one regard, he's really has been kind of a big beneficiary of Tyler Hero's absence. That combined with Caleb Martin's absence as well. So this role has been kind of created for him, and so he's really kind of stepped into to fill that minutes role and stepped into a little bit of a Max Strus-esque role on this team as of last year.
There's usage to soak up in Miami right now for sure.
They just need players that are confident, and he's a guy that is, I mean, he's a rookie, but he really is more of a veteran in comparison to that, in the fact that he's older than probably a quarter of the league.
I think he's older than THT.
Yeah, probably is. Doesn't look older.
No.
But over the last week, you've seen his minutes just really shoot up. He's averaging 34 minutes a night over the last week. And so, and what he's bringing, his profile that he's bringing is that kind of is a classic Heat profile, in that he's bringing defense. He's averaging 1.4 steals per game. And then also, as you could expect, playing 34 minutes a night, he's contributing elsewhere. So he's averaging 15, 4, and 2.5 as well over the last week. So really nice production in the short term. And so I guess I'm curious on what you think. Do you think that he's taken this opportunity and shown what he has and is going to be part of the Heat's plan going forward? Or is this just simply a matter of when Caleb Martin comes back on Thursday, he's going to go back to 25 minutes or 20 minutes a night?
Okay, first of all, I love his addition. I did not consider him for this list. I didn't give him a glance. The first thing that comes to mind is it's funny when we get down this kind of low in guys as far as roster percentage. We get into the DFS darlings, not Dorian Finney-Smith. But if you play daily fantasy, Jaime Jaquez is one of these guys that, like, DFS sharks were on right away, and they were right. But his salary to construct a DFS roster is just bargain basement prices, and his minutes were just there from the get-go as prices got a little higher, but he's a good way to get some studs in there and have a cheap price. So for DFS players, you're aware of this guy. I think he fits the Heat system really well. He's kind of replicating that Caleb Martin role as far as his function in the offense. His skill set's a little more interesting though. He's not somebody I would lose sleep over at all, but I like him in deeper leagues as a speculative ad. If you're looking for a little bit of upside, because like you mentioned, Tyler Hero, Caleb Martin, they're not just out for a game or two. These guys have multi-week absences, I believe. And Tyler Hero has trouble with that ankle. He's if you've had him a lot, like that Tyler Hero misses chunks of games.
He does.
He does. And I just made a trade offer before he went out this latest time, actually. And you were like, hell no. for Simons, actually. And I was like, well, I wonder who's going to come back first at this point.
Yeah, Tyler Hero's having a great season, but that's
dude, he's killing it.
Not the point of this, but yeah.
Not at all. It's just interesting. He's killing it. Yeah, but no, Jaime Jaquez is an interesting pickup if you're looking for a little bit of upside in production now.
Yeah.
I do like it.
Yeah. You have more guys?
Yes, I'm excited about this one. So these are some deeper league cuts, kind of in the Jaquez range. A little bit of quiz time. I'm going to give you an outline, Litke. So just put on your hat here, your basketball reference cap, if you will. So this player is only 26 years old right now. He's a former fantasy darling. In his age 22 season, he had a season where he put up 2.3 blocks and 1.6 steals with a triple and 7 boards in just 28 minutes. He's 26 now.
Yep, I know it is.
Who is it?
I have him written down too.
Yes, give it to me.
He's got the double A in his name, right?
You're dang right.
Jonathan Isaac.
You are right. This is Jonathan Isaac. You had him written down too?
I did, yeah.
Hey, man. So it's interesting because he's just 7% rostered, but he's a name. In one deeper league, I just keep picking him up, dropping him, streaming it in. I can't quite hold him. It's a deeper 9-cat league. His minutes have consistently been in the mid-teens, yet he's putting up 1.8 blocks and a steal and a triple, right?
I feel like, can you just rewind that again? He's averaging 13 minutes a night and that's right. Defensive production. That's insane. That's absolutely, those are outlier numbers.
Which leads me to believe, at least right now, this guy is healthy. He's only 26. We've been waiting for a long time to see if he still existed. I think he exists. Like the shooting right now is sub 30% on 6 attempts, but the free throw percentage is there at 80%, right? So that tells me like this kind of a theme it's turned out. He has nowhere to go but up if he can stay healthy, because of that shooting can creep closer to his career average of 43%. We could be looking at a top 90 player, even if he just plays 18 to 20 minutes a game. So I don't know. Take a look at your bench.
You mentioned a Conwu earlier, and really he's a Conwu if he had a Conwu's minutes, you'd be like, whoa, this is insane. But yeah, I threw him out there just because it was as well. I had him written down, and just those defensive numbers really pop. And when you watch the games, like he still has it. He still has that pop out there, and he flies around out there, and it'll be curious to see. I know Orlando's going through a little bit of an injury situation with Wendell Carter, which isn't totally abnormal, but I think it'd be interesting to see if they're trying to work Jonathan Isaac back up. They're like, all right, first 10 games we're going to have him at the 15-minute cap, and then we're going to have him at a 20-minute cap, or if they're really going to be a little bit more conservative with it. And I think both could make sense, really. He's really been out for the last 19 straight years, so it wouldn't be the most abnormal thing to go ultra conservative with his recovery.
Yeah, that stat line I read you, I think he was his age 7 season, actually.
Oh, really? He's 7 years. Man,
7 years old.
I don't know how he gets so tall. That's amazing.
It's interesting because I think he's out producing Chris Middleton with a similar minutes limit as far as 9-cat.
Yeah, I'm glad I don't own any Middleton stock at this point. I'll tell you that much.
He's not a more frustrating player. Maybe a Kongwu, just because they give him the contract. He has the ability. The guy can't miss a shot. Maybe let him take more. He can't miss a shot.
Yeah, right.
They got to trade.
It's insane.
I got to trade Clint Capella. Okay, I have like the deepest possible name, and I don't have much on him. I want because I know you watch the Blazers much more closely than me. I just want to know what your take on this player, and if the minutes keep creeping up, if you think he could be worth a pickup, especially if you need a guy who's small forward, power forward eligible, and that's Jabari Walker. What do you think of Jabari Walker?
I'd rather have Kamara, but Jabari Walker, first off, he looks like a mom. Second off,
what do you mean?
Well, I don't know. That's my
like
take on him.
Okay.
The most famous thing about Jabari Walker is, and maybe I've said this before, is his first game in the NBA last year as a rookie. I don't know if you were watching this game. It was like one of those like embarrassing moments, but I happened to be watching the end of the game. It was at the very end of it, and they they were probably winning by a decent amount. They were good. They had Dame last year, and they call in Jabari Walker, and he runs off the bench, and he runs onto the floor, rips off his warm-ups, and is out there. And I think they were playing who was Westbrook on last year? He was on the Lakers, right?
Yeah, and
him and Pat Bev.
Obviously the Clippers later, but started with the Lakers, yeah.
Yeah, so they must have been playing the Lakers. In any case, they showed the Lakers bench, and they all just start pointing at Jabari Walker and laughing, and he's like looking around, and like he finally realizes like, why are all these guys laughing at me? And he like looks down, and he's wearing his shorts backwards.
Oh my god!
Like his first game in the league.
I remember that. I do. And we need a compilation, like YouTubers, please. Somebody maybe it exists, but like this has happened before. Players have ran out with their warm-ups on or stuff on backwards. I want to see a compilation of this because I can't quite remember the names, but they all look like moms probably.
Yeah. But I mean, he looks good. He's I'm happy with him. He's getting the minutes at this point. And he's getting out there and
out there.
Sorry, I'm trying to look up what Kamara's numbers are because he's really the guy I'm more interested in. But they did spend. He's getting out there. He looks competent. His passing is strong. I can't necessarily recommend him for fantasy at this point. I think maybe once you get into a silly season, it could be a little bit better. But at this point, I would look elsewhere just because they're a little bit heavy as far as rotation minutes at that particular position rather than guard, where, you pick up a guy like Skylar Mays or you could have picked up a guy like Skylar Mays. But I can't necessarily recommend him overly strongly at this juncture.
I can't in my mind stop insisting that Skylar Mays is the backup running back for like the New Orleans Saints. Sounds like a running back's name.
Yeah, right. Or he's going to play for North Carolina basketball or something like that.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah.
So we got a Twitter question today. I asked people, who are some players that you see on your wire and you wonder why. So this one comes from UK Bay, who I assume is a Kentucky basketball fan, asking about Herb Jones in a points league. So obviously, if you're in a 9-cat league, this guy is gone, in the last 14 days.
Right.
2.6 steals and 1.6 blocks. We have fully realized the Herb Jones outline, and he's, shooting 94% from the line. But the popcorn numbers, 12 points, 4 rebounds, and 2 assists. What that does is just, it's more than enough to justify the steals and blocks, even if they were a little lower in the past. If you were lacking in those categories, hanging on to Herb Jones for a couple months at a time, he was a player I'd look at and I go, 1.2 blocks and 1.3 steals. I don't know because this is a boom and we'll see if it sticks, but sometimes you couldn't roster him because he wasn't giving anything else. So, in a points league in that format, I think he's more of a on the margins guy, just because that's just totals.
Yeah.
But he's young. He's getting the minutes. Take a look at who your worst player is if you want some upside, even in a points league. There's no reason Herb Jones should be sitting on your waiver wire. 62% roster in Yahoo.
Yeah, I mean, if you talked about 2 other New Orleans Pelicans, you clearly put them below the pecking order, below Hawkins and Dyson Daniels, below Herb Jones.
Way below.
Here.
Yeah.
I happened to get lucky last night. in my matchup against James Robinson. He has Herb Jones, and he comes a late addition to being healthy. He didn't get him into the game in time, and it was quite pleasant for me. But I love Herb Jones, and I also those are the type of guys that they're scary to own in a certain way, because like you said, if they're not if you don't get the block or you don't get the 2 steals in that game, then you kind of get almost nothing. And so it feels it feels more boom or busty with those guys in general. But if you're in a category league, what is this guy doing on the wire? But points league, I get it.
And if you're going to tell me I'm going to get 12 points, 4 rebounds, 2 assists all year from Herb Jones, I'll ride out a little bit of the because week to week steals and blocks, they're different. You see the totals, right. But yeah, I think he's must roster at this point for sure.
Yeah, absolutely.
So any lower than Jabari Walker that you wanted to take this podcast before we signed off tonight?
Well, just one like 30-second hit on the way out, and that's a guy to keep your eye on. Not that you're picking him up right now, which is kind of the theme of this podcast, but just a guy to keep your eye on, and that is Cason Wallace. He's performing really well as a rookie. He's passing the eye test. He's getting minutes. I know you don't like to talk about the zombies.
Well, no, it's painful because he was a University of Kentucky player, and I watched him in college and loved him. So when they got his draft rights, it was painful because I was really excited to be the guy who was ahead on this guy. So I love that you brought him up because you're dead on.
Yeah, and I think at this point, he's ranked 150th, and he has been doing well. But he's something that if you're ever watching a game and Shea or Giddey go down for some reason, do not hesitate. Yeah. Run to the wire and pick up this guy, because he's going to be a top 60, top 75 guy for whatever that period of time is that those guys are down. We've seen enough from him at this point.
I think his fantasy profile is similar to Dyson Daniels, but I think he has a higher scoring upside as a player for sure. But the defensive tenaciousness and the translating the fantasy stats, I love Cason Wallace as a player. Hopefully he finds his way out of Podunk City. But yeah, good call. He's a great addition to the list. There's somebody that as the season wears on, and exactly if one of those guys are out, for DFS purposes or plug and play purposes, Cason Wallace is someone to keep an eye on. I love that.
Yeah, despite the big hair.
Well, I mean, we like that hair.
It's a great hair.
Lot of big hair going on. It's just like a big hair era in the NBA. Maybe it's worse because they remade House Party, the kid and play hairstyle. Remember from the early 90s that film House Party? The guy had the giant.
Yeah. Oh, sure. I remember that. Yeah, it was fantastic.
They remade that.
I didn't even know that.
Yeah.
Not touch.
That's okay. I don't think it's required viewing, but okay. So this has been our waiver wire examination of players that it's hard for us to see dangling on our waiver wires. They got long-term upside, or we just see something. And, there's a lot of teams who stick with some of the veterans because it's a comfort. They know their names, but take a look at the production. I don't know. Maybe you just are in fantasy because you love that one night a year where your buddies get together and crush beers and you do a draft. But if you're taking this stuff seriously, a lot of these players, I think you might be able to look at your roster and see you can flip some of them out. So unless if you played Extreme Jones, then just keep the rosters the way they are.
Yeah, don't queue up this podcast for at least a week or two in our league, please.
We need to find a way to not release this to just the 10 other people. By the way, quick shout out to us. Natron Clean and I are first and second in our league, currently 3-0, and we play next week. So let's hold off our opponents for an undefeated clash. I think the people want that.
Yeah. And while you were saying that, I was just going ahead and adding Bial Koulibaly and Keontae George just to fuck with you.
Just now.
Yeah, I don't know. Like I said, I would rather have had some other guys, but I just feel like it'd be so much funner to beat you with the guys that you were just hyping.
In our league, I have Koulibaly. I picked him up this morning. You know that.
I know. I'm just playing. Yeah.
I was like, you probably will pick up Keontae George when we get off here.
No. I'm going to trade for Dylan Brooks.
Oh, God. Okay. All right. Well, for Natron Clean, this is Flyin J. Examine that team. Examine that waiver wire. Hope you're enjoying the season. The NBA should be ashamed of themselves for only suspending Draymond Green for 5 games. And that's not a fantasy nugget, but what just ridiculous, just absurd.
What a clown! What a clown!
But please, follow us on Twitter, Flyin J. That's me. You can find me on Twitter. Make sure to hit up the Steelbridge Coffee page for a great deal on incredible SB brew and some vintage basketball cards. So shout out Steelbridge. And we will talk to you all soon.
Cheers.
Cheers.